I love to play golf. It's a hobby of mine that I took up, I guess, in my early 20s, but in the last year or two, I've gotten more serious about it. Something I really enjoy. I think it's a great way to get outside. It's not exercise, which a lot of people will tell you, but it is physical activity and it's competition, which is fun. But golf is a tough sport, and it takes many years to get good for most people, myself included. It kind of begs the question, why would you undertake something that's going to be this essentially lifelong commitment to get good at something that's just really, really difficult and frustrating? But I think that's part of what draws me to golf, and that's what I'd kind of like to address today, is some of the different components that make golf an interesting game for me, and something that keeps me coming back to the sport, even though I play it badly most of the time. Now, I play golf a lot with a very good friend of mine who I grew up with. And I think that it's very different from playing with strangers because when you play with people you know, it becomes a little more competitive because you'll have bragging rights on an ongoing basis in a lifelong friendship for the rest of your life. So my friend and I came up with some rules that we thought might smooth out our golf game a little bit in terms of keeping our friendship on solid ground. And there are four. The first is you can't make any excuses when you play golf. It doesn't matter if you're hungover, it doesn't matter if you're injured, it doesn't matter if you're using clubs that don't belong to you. When you play golf, you're playing the game, and you can't make any excuses for your performance outside of the way you perform. The second is money changes everything. Once you decide to play for money, the dimension of the game kind of shifts, and frankly, it's a little less fun. But when you do play for money, the last two tenets that we made are the most important. The first is don't whine when you win, or don't whine when you lose. After you lose, you have to lose gracefully and with sportsmanship. By the same token, when you win, you can't gloat. You can't rub it in your friend's face that you won and took his money. What I like to say about golf is that it's a lifetime of mild frustration and small victories. Now, the mild frustration takes place mostly off the golf course, when you're thinking about your game and how you would like it to be better. The small victories take place on the golf course, and for me, that's a good shot on a difficult hole, two-putting when I should have three-putted, or just generally having an overall good game despite what the scorecard might say. Golf is kind of a vengeful game in that it will punish you for any mistake you make. So these small victories really what contribute to make it an interesting game and something that it's good to come back to week after week and see where you've improved and where your small victories have kind of shifted from one game to the next. And sometimes they come back after they've been gone for a while. Now, breaking down the game is important because, contrary to what some people may think, golf is fairly complex in terms of the physicality involved, the rules, and the changing setting in which you play the game. Every course is a little different. So, I've devised four components that can really make golf a little bit easier for the bad to mediocre golf player, which is me. The first is to practice. Go to the driving range and get out on the course as much as you can. It's like anything else, like making presentations. It requires a great deal of practice to become a competent golf player to the extent that you'll really enjoy playing the game. The second tenet is patience. You have to be patient when you're playing golf. The fourth is resolve, to keep playing even when you suck. This is probably the most important one. And the final component to really breaking down golf is to relax. You'll never have fun playing if you're tense. Now, that kind of extends to two different dimensions of the game. If you don't relax, you're not going to play well in the sense that your muscles will be tight. Hitting a golf ball isn't like hitting a baseball. It's not the kind of motion that you take and exhale and snap your wrists. It's more of a fluid motion that you want to be able to repeat over and over again exactly the same way. Now, if you don't relax physically, take deep breaths, relax your diaphragm, and keep your back straight but not stiff, you're never going to hit the golf ball right on any part of the course, your drive, your irons, or your putt. The second dimension of relaxation that is really critical with golf is the mental part. Without relaxing mentally, you'll never relax physically. Now, relaxing mentally on the golf course isn't always easy, especially if you're playing a competitive game with someone you'd really like to beat, like I described before in the games I play with my friend. So, when I do go on the golf course, I try to remind myself that this is a game. It's supposed to be fun. I'm outside, the sun is usually shining, And more often than not, I'll play a little bit better than I had the previous time. Now, that relaxation kind of ties into what I think makes golf, a sport that you can play really your entire life. It's what's called a life sport. It's like running or swimming. It's something that is low impact in terms of physicality, so you can play it forever. Now, those two dimensions of relaxation tie into what I call the time was zen of golf. If you're a relaxed, focused golfer, you can play golf in a fun, constructive way when you're in your 20s or when you're in your 90s. Now, finding that zen is difficult, and it requires relaxation, but also the four tenets of the game I described before. Because if you're not a good golfer, it's difficult to really target that area of zen where golf is going to be a fluid game that you could play again and again and again and improve incrementally every time. What really makes golf an exciting thing now, and I know exciting isn't the word most people would kind of associate with golf, is some of the camaraderie it brings. Now, it's fun to play with strangers because it comes with a little less baggage than it does when you play with your family or friends, at least when you play with my family or friends. But it's just one of those things where you can go out, you can do it every weekend, at least every weekend in the spring and summer, if you live somewhere where the seasons change. And there's some personal satisfaction almost every time you go out. I think that's important. It brings an important dimension to anyone's life to do something like that, where it's not work, it's not school, it's not the stress associated with either one of those things, or the stress associated with, personal relationships. It's just a time to go and be outside, enjoy yourself, and try to get better at something you like. Now, that's not something everybody finds in their life. So in that way, I'm glad to have found golf and try to explore what I like to call the time was zen of golf. Do you guys have any questions? Tommy.
Mr. Gaffey, you mentioned money changes hands. How much money are we talking about?
Well, in my case, I really got a little more serious about golf as a student. So I would say the sums are usually in the single digits. However, sometimes we play for $1 a hole. Depending on how the game goes, if it's about 50-50, you won't make any money because it'll be the same $9 exchanging hands for the entire game. But for me, small sums of money because I don't have too much of it.
Right. And you talked about repeating the motion every time.
Mm-hmm.
Does the motion change for different clubs?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. Golf is a sport that's about muscle memory. Now, in some sports, you want to fight muscle memory. It's something that, takes away from the kinetic energy of some of the fluid tissue that makes someone a better athlete. But in the case of golf, you do have different swings for different shots. A long shot requires a very open swing. A shorter shot, you'll keep your arms closer into your body. So, yes, you have to develop really 3 different dimensions of muscle memory to be a competent golfer. Tara.
Do you bring the same mindset when you're playing with strangers or business associates as you do with your friends and family?
Excellent question. Playing with business associates is kind of a complicated way to play golf because it really depends on the kind of player you are. If you're a very bad golfer, you don't want to be the worst player in a foursome of business associates because professionally that can make you look bad. And you don't want to be the topic of conversation at work the next day, oh, Gaffey's such a terrible golfer. On the other hand, if you're playing with someone who's, way above you in the organizational chart, you don't want to blow their doors off if you're a good golfer. You want to keep it tight to kind of maintain the illusion of it being a close game. And finally, when you play with your friends, I think all bets are off, and it's just a competitive free-for-all. You have to win every single time. Megan?
What was your favorite game of golf you played? Where were you and who were you with?
Ooh, well, my favorite game of golf that I've ever played was probably with my dad at Rye Golf Club. And it's not for sentimental reasons. It's not because we went out on the course and bonded. It's just because I played really, really well. And it was actually the first time I played this spring, so it was a really pleasant surprise. I hadn't swung clubs in a few months, and I just went out and I had a really great game, by my standards. So, yeah, that's been my favorite game of golf, just from a performance standpoint. As far as just having a good time, it would be tough to pick another one. It's always fun. I go with friends or my dad or family, or as I will next August, I'm kind of dreading this, business associates. It's always different. I guess.
You gotta edit out the Chris.
Yeah.